Um, so just to give you a little bit of background, how this ever even started was back in 2014, our local TIF received a grant to do a placemaking study, and it actually came out of the fact that one of the TIF members wanted to figure out where to put bike racks. And so the TIF received a grant. We hired a planning firm. They did a placemaking study, and their suggestion was that, or one of their observations was that the city of Hillsdale is not a friendly place if you're a pedestrian. So they suggested that the city work with MDOT, since M99 is a state route, and work with MDOT to do a road diet, or a traffic calming plan is what they call it. And so that started lots of discussions over the years, and eventually in, it was about this time last year, MDOT approached the city and said, hey, we're going to be milling and resurfacing M99 through the downtown area. If you are still interested in looking at a road diet, that would be the time to do it, because a lot of the costs could be split and incurred by MDOT, since they were already going to be doing drawings to do the project. So the city hired a traffic engineer to do a traffic study to verify that what we were proposing, which was a single lane north and a single lane south and a designated left turn lane through the downtown, would not adversely affect traffic through the city. And the other objective was to make non-motorized traffic, which is pedestrian and bicycles and anything else that is human powered, give them an avenue to follow M99 through the city. So we hired Wade Trim, and this is our traffic engineer, Lori Pollock, and we hired Wade Trim to do the traffic study. And their conclusion was that not only did it not create adverse effect by doing a road diet, it would actually improve some things, some of the traffic issues in the downtown. The other thing that the city is taking advantage of is to change some of the intersections that just quite simply need to be fixed. So that's the overview of the project. These plans show what we're proposing. These have been reviewed by MDOT, but this is strictly a preliminary meeting to kind of get to answer questions and to get feedback. And so I'm here on behalf of the city. Lori is here on behalf of Wade Trim, and then we also have a planner here on behalf of MDOT, in case there are questions that that are strictly MDOT related that he might be able to answer. So I think that's it as far as the overview. So I guess at this point, I'm gathering there are some questions. So
I have a couple questions. Some of the questions, so I know with the diet around City Hall, they're actually going to reduce the number of parking locations again. So it's going to be harder to get to the city. The way it's coming around, you're not going to be able to use the post office parking anymore to walk over, because the city police cars are usually all lined up there. So there's no place to park.
So yes and no. So yes, we're going to close that spur off. That's the proposal. But in doing so, we are going to redo that area and actually increase the number of parking spaces from about 15 to over 40. So the intent is to actually redo the area and eliminate the fact that City Hall and the post office are currently islands, traffic islands, and increase the number of parking spaces around that area.
But right in front of the post office, though, that parking's going away, is that
The
correct?
4 parking spots closest to the post office on
south
the
side.
north side, right at the bottom of the steps, do not appear on the drawing.
On North Street.
You mean these 4 here?
Exactly.
For the city.
No,
basically increasing-
those are actually, those aren't shown here because those are not going to be touched, because that's actually, US.
They should- Why aren't they on, I mean, they should be on the drawing to let you know what the future plan is going to be. It looks like they're being removed.
Yeah, they're not being removed.
That's federal property, isn't it?
Right, so that's why we didn't touch it. Bob?
Alan, you mentioned that all of this was to alleviate traffic issues that we're having. Could you enlighten us on the traffic issues that we're having, that this is going to take care of? Because honestly, I don't see any traffic issues that we're having that need to be
Most-
alleviated.
So a lot of the traffic issues that we're alleviating are pedestrian related, but there are a number of accidents that according to the models would be eliminated or reduced significantly by doing this, and most of them, the majority of the accidents that occur on the M99 through that area are rear end accidents. By putting in a designated left turn lane, it would eliminate almost all of them.
Do we have numbers that show
Yeah,
how
it's in
many
the traffic
accidents?
study.
Yeah, so like Alan mentioned with the road diet, studies have found that typically the number of crashes would be reduced, it can be reduced up to 50%. And in this case, there's about 20 crashes per year on the corridor that we studied. And with the road diet, there's 4 lanes typically that we're gonna be converting to a 3-lane section. So, you know, it sounds like you're reducing capacity by taking away those 2 center lanes, but really those 2 center lanes are almost acting like a center turn lane. People are slowing down to turn, then, you know, if you're traveling behind them and wanna go through, you have to slow down to turn. So, with the road diet, it's really improving safety, which is a #1 priority here with the city. And then on top of that, they are also doing some other improvements, like some of the side street closures at Broad Street and Carlton. We looked at doing a dual left turn lane there, so that way that's getting twice as much traffic turning left to get through per cycle of the signal. So we've got some other improvements in conjunction with this road diet that we modeled, and it showed that the delays per vehicle would be pretty much the same with the improvements that the city is suggesting. So I don't know if that helps.
So, this being pedestrian driven, are you gonna put in more crosswalks in the middle of the block
So
or
we are
something, or-
adding a crosswalk south of North Street here that will cross. This is where North and Howell go off. There'll be a crosswalk added here, so that you don't have to go all the way down to Carlton or all the way up to McCullum in order to cross. And a majority of people cross here anyway, which is why we're adding the crosswalk. I mean, me included, so.
But if you're adding the crosswalk, will there be a stop sign or a stoplight there? Or are people still gonna be at their own risk just in the crosswalk? Because traffic's
Those-
not going to stop there, are they?
Those are things that have not been completely worked out because we're not in any way down to those details yet.
Oh, okay.
But this is just the preliminary proposal.
Is it possible to put a crosswalk there without reducing the lanes for traffic? As it is now?
Yes.
No,
No.
no.
Alan, if you put a crosswalk there and don't program a traffic light, how long before an engineer shows up and says, you know, we could cut down civilian and pedestrian injuries by 20% next year by putting in a traffic light and stopping traffic one more time, when M99 should have come down the east side of town anyway. M99 is really the problem with the traffic going through town, and you're making them turn a 330-degree corner there to get onto eastbound Carlton. If they were coming in and
You
out
mean
of
here?
town, yeah, that right-hand turn.
So this is
becomes
all
a
existing,
four-lane
this is
effort.
all existing. And that's not changing. The physical construction of this intersection is not changing. The only thing that we're changing here is we're reducing the southbound lane to 1. We're creating, and then we're making these 2 lanes would be both left turn lanes, and then the right hand would still be a right hand turn
But if you're making
lane.
that right, you gotta be in the left lane in a rig. There's no way you're getting a truck around that corner.
So I think maybe when we talked about the resurfacing project, with that, there's not a total reconstruct of the curb, so with the resurfacing, they're gonna mill down the existing pavement from curb to curb, and then, resurface it with an additional couple layers of pavement. So I think with the geometry, major changes like that aren't going to be taking place as part of this project. It's not in the.
And one of the things that MDOT did request was that the engineer look at making certain that trucks could still turn left in both lanes at the same time.
Okay, but
and
right
it
now,
was,
you've got a safety valve to turn right down
Yeah.
North Street.
so you
You're taking away the
mean
North
having
Street.
2 lanes turning left, or 2 semis turning left here at the same time?
He's talking
No,
about
so
semis
turning
turning
right.
right.
Oh, turning right
You're
here.
taking
No,
away
heading
the
east
North
on
Street
on the
right-hand
sharp
turn.
corner.
Coming back behind City
Turning
Hall.
right on the sharp
Here?
corner. Yeah.
They do it now.
No, they're going down the straightaway between the post office
You're,
and.
you're taking away the right-hand
They're
turn at
cutting.
North Street.
Are they
and
cutting
driving
this
them
way?
all down to the
Yes,
point.
that's the way they're going now, so they don't have that.
So that way this turn is more
Exactly.
90.
You're taking away the safety valve that lets a trucker get around that corner.
Cause they have to go right around that corner and then try to turn left up toward the counter.
Well, there is double lane on Carlton though, so there is 2 lanes for anyone taking their right turn eastbound to utilize that center lane east and east.
So,
Yeah, but then you just killed the right lane.
yeah, the
gotta
the
set it up
trucks
so
should
that-
stay on the
North Street.
main route. They shouldn't be cutting
Well,
through
he's
the.
talking about trucks that are gonna turn here and then try and go this way.
No, I'm talking about you've taken away the right-hand turn at North Street.
Alan.
Oh, at North Street, here?
There's the problem, the 6-way intersection. Nobody ever solved.
Can't they turn right there? Still?
No, we're eliminating that completely.
M99 should be coming right down Carlton.
I've got 2 comments. I lived in Coldwater for 31 years and they did a similar road diet. It's very frustrating to drive through there now. Used to have 2 lanes both ways and it goes down to 1 lane with a left turn lane. It takes considerably longer to get through town. You're stuck at every single lane because it takes so long to get through. I go back frequently.
Can't hear you.
And I'm very frustrated
She's
every
making
time
good
I go to
points.
Coldwater. So if you wanna see what it'll be like, go to Coldwater and see how long it takes you to get through town. My other comment is that closing off Cook Street is gonna be a problem for all the parishioners of, the 2 churches on that corner, St. Peter's and also St. Anthony, because that road is actually very highly used on a very regular basis. There are always cars parked there, cars going in and out, to access both St. Peter's when they go to church, when they go to, mass for St. Anthony's at certain masses, and then also to access the back of those churches. So closing that off would be a big problem for people who use it very regularly as well.
I'll let you speak to that one.
So the thought behind closing off Cook Street was because there is no long-term plan to redo Cook Street. So we wanted to minimize the traffic coming off of M99 onto there, so it keeps it at least what shape it is in for now. They still be able to access off of Fair Street.
Well,
So with-
I
with
agree
that
it's a poor
said-
condition, but I would rather still have access to it, even if it's dirt, than close it off.
Okay, with that said, if you're going to access Cook off of Ferris and come up the hill to either go to church, to use the Tuesday night free health clinic, they have a school at St. Anthony's, a great school now, so it does, as she mentioned, does get a lot of traffic. So if I pull up that hill and park, how am I gonna turn around to come back down that hill? Are you putting in a cul-de-sac at the end up there so people have a way to turn around, or am I just gonna have to back down the hill? How is that going to
So
work?
you probably have to utilize the driveway they have up there to turn around at this time.
That's a private drive.
Yep, so the other thought was to abandon Cook Street and giving the properties over to the adjacent property owners. So that was something that came up as well.
Yeah.
Where are the police cars gonna be parked?
They'll park in the same place that they park now, except they'll come in here.
If there's an emergency, they've got to go all the way around the post office to get out of there.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than just go into the corner and turn like they do now, so that's gonna cost them a lot of time, cause they gotta go down to Ferris Street in order to get out of there.
I don't think it'll increase it by very much.
What's that?
I said, I don't think it would increase it by that much.
That street gets a lot of
It
traffic.
depends on if you're the
A lot
guy
of
with the
traffic
gun in
goes
his
through there.
face at Walgreens.
CJ.
For somebody who parks on that direction with the people that pull into the post office, I can tell you from personal experience that I've had my side mirror ripped off. Within a 2-week period, we had 4 cars that had their side mirrors ripped off because people
Here?
are cutting tight to go into the post office. I like that idea because it eliminates the fact that people are, like, they're coming in and they're cutting in too early and they're taking off mirrors. I mean, I don't even park on that without pushing in my mirror anymore. So I personally like that idea. What I have a question about is all the bike path on both sides of the street. I mean, I see that as a train wreck with the parallel parking. And has anyone considered, the other thing would be somebody comes in and they're not real good at parallel parking. So they're doing this to get in and you've got a line of traffic behind you. So that would be a concern. And then have they looked at maybe eliminating parallel parking, eliminating maybe one side of the bike path and doing angled parking so that people could angle park?
You can't back into a state highway.
No, I don't think angle parking is something that we would.
Oh, okay.
How many cyclists do we have that are
They won't.
trying to use M99 now? And where are we
Where's the
coming
data?
from and going to with these bicycles?
Where's the data?
Are we connecting something for bicycles that is not connectable now?
No, so that's trying to get, so as right now, everyone's using the bike path portion to get through, Osseo, Hillsdale to Jonesville. This is another avenue, so the bike path users, events can go from the bike path to our downtown area is what it's for.
Well, where's the connector to get from the bike path?
It's back here at
299.
Carlton and Union. I don't know if it goes back that far.
Yeah. it
Yep,
does.
so the connector is right here to get across. This crosswalk right here, the bike path comes across and shoots down here, so they can get on the bike path here, or they can go over here and stay on the original bike path.
The bike path is on Monroe Street along.
Yep, it's part of it, yep.
I mean, where you point, there is no bike
Yeah,
path.
it is the bike path. It is the bike path. So the bike path comes here, comes across, and this is a crosswalk to come over here to Union Street to get back on the bike
Well,
path.
but you ran your hand where the depot is, and that's not the bike path. The bike path is Monroe Street.
Right, the depot's right
Yeah.
here, the depot's right here, this is Hillsdale Street, depot's right here, Monroe Street's back here.
Correct.
So there's not a connector.
As in,
Well, there would be, I mean, there will be, they'll
Your
pick
elbow
it
is on
up.
the bike path,
Well, see, the bike path actually at the moment ends here, Gelser sits about here.
Yep.
And the bike path actually at this point terminates on, or dumps onto
you're proposing
Carlton.
a bike path
We're proposing.
on Broad Street.
Yes, and the bike path would go this way,
That's
or you could actually
That's
come this
Carlton,
way.
and there's not a connector for the bike path to Broad Street.
No, we would actually add one at this,
Right.
we would actually add one if we did the road diet.
Where is the bicycle racks that initially started this thing back in.
Yeah, they never installed them because there was no way to get bikes to them.
How much demand is there for them?
We've had bike groups that have talked about coming to Hillsdale, but because we didn't have a route through the downtown, they chose not to. Bless.
We're making this change for somebody that lives elsewhere.
So I have two questions. One is, do we have to do the bike path? Is that like is that something that MDOT requires of us? That's the first question. The second question is how many state highways where it's like the only state highway in the area going in that direction for, I don't even know, how far is 127 and then how far is the other one going the other way? How many state highways have bike lanes on them? Is that a common thing that you get semi trucks going next to bike lanes?
Okay, you answer that one.
Hi, everybody. State employee hiding in the corner. Yes, we have bike lanes on numerous MDOT trunk lines and state highways throughout the state. So we've done, I'd have to go back and count. We've done so many road diet projects in some form or the other throughout our 9-county region, in addition to the rest of the state. I think the first part of the question was, is it required to do the bike infrastructure as part of this project? It's not required. MDOT is not requiring any specific design choices from Hillsdale. Our project is supporting the Hillsdale's plans and what the staff and others have told us and worked with us to get it to this point. So there's still opportunities for changes to this, as Alan mentioned at the beginning. There is specific funding that the city's working to acquire that would enable the biking infrastructure. So, but I think one other thing that a couple things I've heard is that we do see the safety benefits whenever we do these lane reductions. As Lori mentioned before, those inside lanes do tend to lead to crashes. Luckily, we're probably not looking at a major amount of crashes or a high volume of severe injury or fatal crashes, but every crash is important. And so that the center turn lanes do allow for safer environments. They do slow traffic. Now, having traffic slower through a downtown is a pro and a con. It does mean it takes you a little bit longer to get through to your destination, but it does lead to more development and sales and business revenue for these downtowns. It's one thing that has been studied nationwide, that as people are traveling at a slower speed through a downtown, or if they're catching a signal that they wouldn't normally catch, it does give them an opportunity to look around and see what's in that town. So it's not necessarily in every community. Speed and timing is an important factor. One thing MDOT's been doing over the last decade is letting the communities decide what their priority is for them. So, and then the one really critical thing that comes up with these is when it comes to first responders and emergency vehicles. Emergency vehicles are allowed to break whatever traffic laws they want to in an emergency, and they won't get a ticket. So it doesn't matter if there's a one-way street. If they have to go up the wrong way in a one-way street, they will do it. And in fact, a lot of the national research shows that these 3-lane cross sections with the center turn lane lead to easier traffic emergency response, because the first responders can use this center turn lane as that travel lane when there's congestion. So think about the 4 lanes in 2 lanes in each direction. Emergency vehicles are weaving in and out, whereas they can get in that center turn lane and use it as long as they need to. So if they have to pop up on the curb, if they have to use the bike lane when there's no one in it, they will. And that's in no way restricted by any of this infrastructure.
Drew?
Alan? Are you Drew? Okay. Real quick. Sorry, it's okay.
I'm
Alan,
losing
Lori,
my voice.
Jason, unnamed MDOT employee, thank you for all this work and giving us the opportunity to respond. Just
Ron?
Hey,
And then-
Alan, question. When you're on Carlton, behind City Hall, and you want to turn right to go south on 99, okay? There's only gonna be one lane to turn into, right? So are there gonna be like a, because sometimes it takes forever to turn to the right because, turn left.
Okay.
It takes a
Okay.
long time to turn left because some people wait for the people turning right in front of you to go and, you know, cause it's just a cluster trying to turn back there. Sometimes you'll have to sit there through a couple lights to be able to turn left to go up.
And you're gonna try lights down.
So at,
Go up towards, to go south on 99.
So you'll have
at
it to
Carlton
review
and Broad Street, is that the?
Yes.
the
Yeah,
Adams
so
times.
we took a look at that too, so like I mentioned before,
YouTube.
reconfiguring that intersection a little bit, having the northbound,
I'm
well,
sorry, what's it
that
called?
north
The
wide turn,
Adams
have the dual
times.
left. And then the kind of more restricted, I'm gonna say sharper turn this way.
Oh, 1D.
We're looking at a protected left turn, so that the protected
should
left
be it.
turn, it would be permitted protected, so you'd still be able to turn left on green, but then there'd be another part of the signal phase where just the left turns can go. And they would not be conflicting with the right turns, well, they would not be conflicting with pedestrians on the other side of the intersection as well.
So
right
that,
turn
that
is
is
coming
the other, that is
eastbound.
the other thing that I did forget, I'm sorry. But one of the things that will be done at at both Bacon and Broad and at Broad and Carlton is those signals will be replaced and upgraded because currently they're considered obsolete. And what MDOT and Wade Trim had discussed was the way in which they were signaled so that it would improve traffic flow and make for better pedestrian traffic flow as well.
Are those
Does that
coordinated
mean
lights?
does that mean if there was a light there, which there is, that there would also then be a minute where there would be just a left turn and the other ones would stop, and that the left turn people, as Rod was saying, to come south on 99 work?
Like on 12 in Jonesville going on to 99.
Because
Yeah,
if there wasn't, there's
it would be
nobody's
something,
turning left there.
it would be
You're gonna have a
something
single line.
similar to that, but as far as the details of that, I am not certain. And MDOT, I don't think has actually come up with a design for that, but that's what they're planning on changing the signaling there to improve both flow for traffic, but also improve safety for pedestrians, because we all know that crosswalk is horrible. So, you two back here have been waiting for a while.
With regard to increasing sales and revenue, by making it congested in town and making it a pain to come through town, would it not do the opposite by deterring people from coming into town?
I don't have the exact numbers in the traffic report that Lori's team worked on, and that's something that Alan and the city will be able to put on and share. There's not predicted congestion with this project.
Yeah, there is some opportunity to improve some of the signal timings. So you may notice whenever you're driving anywhere, there's green time where on side streets where no traffic is coming. So with some signal timing improvements and with the other improvements that the city is suggesting, the amount of delay per vehicle will be about the same with these changes. Or reduced, especially at Broad where there's gonna be the dual left turns.
Dave?
Can you explain to me the need for a dedicated left turn lane between Stabrook and Bacon? Both northbound and southbound?
We just opted to continue the diet to the city limits. There's no reason, we don't have to do that, we just took the
So
opportunity
it's not
to do so.
pedestrian safety, it's just a random thing?
Well, it wasn't random, it was for continuity.
Okay, continuity.
And wherever there's driveways, you know, the left turn lane is for people turning left into the driveways, so.
I'll submit to you, most of those people are headed south and they're gonna turn right. The fairgrounds on the east side, and nobody's turning into the fairgrounds.
Oh, between South and Steenberg?
Yep.
Okay.
When I drive to town doing 30 miles an hour, the semis pass me at 45 everywhere, whether it's on Carlton or South Hillsdale or just anywhere in town, they pass me doing 45. If you slow the speed limit down, who's gonna enforce it then when it's not enforced now? And how many of the accidents are due to people going over the speed limit?
That I cannot answer.
So I don't think there was any talk of reducing the speed limit.
Not that I'm aware.
Well, he's talking about enforcing what is there.
No, I understand what he's asking, and
No,
I don't have an answer
I thought
for
you
him.
were gonna lower the speed.
We hadn't gotten to that part.
Ben called my turn to drive for information purposes. I've been 30 years or more teaching traffic to teenagers in this county. Parts of this are okay, traffic-wise. I know when traffic backs up, I know where traffic backs up. I on purpose move kids from one lane to another to avoid traffic. So there are places that this is good, but there's places that this plan is not good. I've done driver's ed long enough to go through the disaster that Coldwater did, that she talked about. The rerouting of the road to the other side of the police station, City Hall. The nightmare that parking meters were in downtown. I can get kids through whatever MDOT comes up with. One of my questions was answered. Are there going to be designated left turn only traffic lights, like the gentleman over here asked about in Jonesville? We only have one of them in the county. One. That I have to take every kid through. 283 students last year. Nobody will be able to turn left off of what is now the 4-lane if there are not designated left turn only lights at different intersections. The question that did not get answered, that personally is annoying, because I have kids running through town after 9 o'clock. I'm heading them back to their various schools in the county. Can we please, whoever's in charge, get the traffic lights to not turn off their normal cycle at 9 o'clock at night? I don't know who was eating the special brownies at that meeting.
I would actually agree with you on that one, but I don't know who's, I'm assuming that it would be MDOT that we would need
I'm
to
sure
petition.
this is an MDOT issue,
Yeah.
but
Is it all the signals?
Yeah, so
along the
all,
road?
there's like 4 of them.
And if you're, and especially on West Street, if you wanna cross Carlton at West Street after 9 o'clock, you get it.
West Street, when I have kids, we parallel park up by the college because downtown is not usable for parallel parking with teenagers.
I didn't know what that was.
Either all the spots are full or people try to pass us while we're backing up and come extremely close to hitting my car. Now I've had, what did I count? 5 cars totaled since 2018. Only one of them by a deer. The rest of them were adults hitting me. I have never in 30 plus years had a teenager hit somebody else. It's always people hitting us. Blessed I am, never had a teenager hurt. Yes, I've had to make some phone calls to parents, please come get your kid, we can't drive home. But the traffic light's changing at 9 o'clock, I cannot get a kid cross West Street. I have to take him to the market house. Another MDOT thing that is not in your plan, that please make a note. Put a left turn traffic light at the market house, Fayette and Carlton.
Yeah.
Because no, I cannot get kids to turn left without having close calls. The left turn statistically, and you would know, statistically is the most dangerous turn to make. It has the highest crash rate. but I gotta teach kids how to do it.
I know that the light there was a discussion back when I first started with the city, and MDOT chose not to add a light there, but they did change the timing, and it improved it, but I.
Traffic has increased over the past 15 years minimum. We have more cars going through town.
Yeah, we can talk to MDOT about that.
Thank you. On behalf of the teenagers.
Why wasn't angled parking considered as a part of this on Broad Street?
Too dangerous.
Yeah, yeah, we just didn't consider it. Yeah.
Don't you have to back up to parallel park anyway?
You do, but getting out is more difficult.
It's Whole Street, and a bunch of people trying to back out.
Yeah. Although it would be back in angled parking, I would imagine, if they did that, but that's not something that we consider just because of width of the highway and the fact that we wanted to put bike lanes in. We couldn't do both.
During Fair Week, the area near the fairgrounds gets very congested with the current 4 lanes that we have. So since this diet is proposed to go all the way to Steamburg, how would we navigate Fair Week with only half as many lanes? How would anyone make any turns in that area, even to the gas station?
It's not just Fair
Typically
Week,
during
smoke
any
show,
special event,
Saturdays.
you're gonna need police control. I mean, the way the roads are designed are for typical weekday, typical traffic day, not for special events.
But we have a lot of special events at the fairgrounds, so that this is something that would affect everything in that area on a regular basis, especially Fair Week, but other times as well.
Saturday. Every
Yeah, there's
Saturday.
been, on the fair thing, there's been times on busy evenings, like Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday, it's taken people over 2 hours to get off 99 to get into the fairgrounds department.
To get from 99
They're backed up
into
way
the
past
park?
Fifth Third, trying to get to the fairgrounds.
To their point, it's kind of, that one area is kind of a very peculiar area in the county because it is the county fairgrounds. There are people from all over the county, so it's not just the 8-some-odd thousand people that live in Hillsdale. It's many more people who are coming in, and while it is, I play devil's advocate against myself, is while it is only a week for the fair, there are all of these other special events that do happen where it's not just Hillsdale residents, it is, we are the county seat, so people come here.
Are you advocating that the people don't come into the city, that don't live in the city? Is that what you're saying?
No, but you may wanna alter the math, take another look at South Street South along there and leave that alone at a bare minimum.
That's fair.
Leave that be south of South Street.
Okay. CJ?
Why the bike path in town when the bike path is down on?
Well, the intent was to try and bring more of the cycling clubs into the downtown. They used to come through our town. When I first started here in the early 2010s, we had cycling clubs that would come in from both west and east, and they would come through and they would stop and utilize the restaurants, shop in the downtown stores, and I remember when they stopped doing it because they said it was too scary to take M99 through the downtown without designated lanes.
You say they're coming from the south and from the east and the
west. And from Lansing.
M99 cuts right perpendicular to that path. So how are we helping them by adding bike lanes on a north-south route?
Also, they're coming in on places that don't have bike lanes to get here, right? So I think maybe the most of cyclists are worried about bad roads and not necessarily. I just want to make a few comments if I could. It's a good thing for local communities to decide what they should have, so thank you for that principle. That's a good one to follow. I live near the fairgrounds and I work at the college. And
for about 3 to 4 months last year. I walked to work every day, and I didn't have a problem. And I took many different routes. It's very walkable. There's 2 lanes down from 4 would be a total disaster for traffic. It would definitely adversely affect traffic through the main thoroughfare of the city. Even during first shift rush, like that's there's a lot of traffic there. So you're talking about taking us down from 4 lanes to 2, and with the center lane, that would really back up anything that's stopping at a light, and then you get all sorts of people trying to get in there, and it just wouldn't be, turning out from any of those neighborhoods like where I live would be really tough. Don't we want more good paying jobs in Hillsdale, right? That's what we're trying to do, economic development, more manufacturing, things like that. If you're trying to get people to come in, you're doing exactly the opposite. If you want more people to come in here to work, the opposite would be taking their driving lanes away, right? A couple other things. Does anybody just go for a drive and say, maybe I'll stop when I slow down? Maybe I'll stop and go in a shop when I have to slow down?
Nope.
That study was probably done by some nice fangled university somewhere, but it doesn't comport with reason. Nobody says, oh, I'm going 10 miles an hour instead of 20 now because there's so many cars in front of me. Maybe I should go to that shop and spend money. People just get in their car to go places. That's what people do. And then my final point is you can't say, we're adding 2 lanes so that 2 left turning lanes. We're doubling the lanes so that we can have better traffic through there. And we're subtracting 2 lanes so that we can have better traffic through there. Those 2 things don't add up. So I think there's a lot of tension, a lot of people here, because most people like to be able to get to work in 5 to 6 to 10 minutes. And most people like to be able to pass somebody who's going really slowly. Most people like to be able to use the roads. If we had an emergency, heaven forbid, we're all kind of shoveled into that one thing. I mean, we saw with the fires, all the road diets were the fad in California. Guess what? They couldn't get out of their community fast enough when the fires came. So there's dozens of other reasons, but we really should have a serious conversation about keeping what we have and not adopting some fad that is coming out of Lansing or California or New York or something like that.
Amen.
Because it works very well.
I live up in the same area as Mr. Bell, and my access to the downtown area is turning right on Hallett and hitting 34. Because of the 4 lanes, I never have to wait to pull on. We're not a metropolis that there's that much traffic that it bogs the mind. Most people travel 30, that's the speed limit. I agree with the gentleman there, slow it down. I don't see that many semis going through there. But I agree with him, if you take it down, then you're making more congestion. Right now, it's a pretty easy flow. Just maybe have more policemen or change the limit of speeding to avoid the accidents that I've never seen an accident on 34.
Left turn lanes right now would make a big difference on a few places.
Amen.
Left turn signals would make a huge difference.
Signals.
Just the
It'd speed
signals.
things up.
Signals. Yeah.
Alan has, and maybe directed to MDOT as well, has a study been done on the safety of the bicyclists? Not just from semis going by them, but as Barb and the others have mentioned, from Hallett, Sharp, South, Berry, pick a street. If we're to try to turn left out of there, and now we're trying to watch this 1 lane of traffic instead of 2, if we're watching for cars, we're not watching for bicyclists, and if we pull out going, here's my chance to get out, and all of a sudden we pull out, this bicyclist comes running into the side of our vehicle. Has there been an impact study, pardon the pun, done to show, is this a safe thing when trying to turn left into this congested area, that bicyclists don't get hit or things of that nature?
But if you're turning left into that lane and someone's turning right, that could be a collision there.
You're right.
You're going down from 4 lanes to 3, now you've got 2 people trying to go, which would of course make more accidents happen there.
I don't normally interrupt, but I have a significant problem with the adult driving population failing to yield turning left. At the city building traffic light, I have kids doing a right turn on a green light. Opposite of me, the car will turn left right into the side of me. And when I honk, they flip us off.
So
I just didn't know if there were numbers or something that.
I can address that. So we don't have a specific study for this specific location where we're doing predictive traffic modeling for crashes specific by turning movement type. But there are numerous research studies and case studies throughout the United States that show that when a bicyclist and a pedestrian and a car and a truck and a scooter and a wheelchair, when these modes have their own facility, they are safer than sharing a facility together. So what you have now is anybody that wants to cycle, whether or not they're coming from out of your community or they're your own community members, they're sharing a lane. If there's a sidewalk, they're trying to share the sidewalk. Well, biking on a sidewalk is no safer than biking in the street, and many times it's more dangerous. If you don't have a dedicated facility, a lot of times you see a cyclist will feel safer biking on the opposite side of the street. So that what we were taught growing up is to get on, if you don't have a facility, you use the shoulder and you drive against the traffic. Well,
is Michigan known as a bicycle state or as a motoring state?
Both.
I
I
think statistically in numbers you're wrong.
So we have, thousands of miles of biking and pedestrian infrastructure throughout the state. We have hundreds of millions of dollars getting invested in the state to build out additional biking and walking facilities. But I think specific to the what we're looking at is when a cyclist has a dedicated space and there's been that lane removed, when you're making a left turn, you are looking at where the cyclist is coming from and the car. So this allows the biking infrastructure to be moved further off of that gutter or the curb and be more visible. Yes, there is attention that's need to be paid on all of these interactions, but it is safer than having to share space.
Are you talking competitive bikers or like the children and the parents?
I'm talking about somebody that has to take a bike for a job, or has,
Well, it's
or
not gonna
wears.
be all winter, I mean, it's not gonna be all year that they're gonna take a bike.
So I passed someone on the way here biking,
Bicyclists
so
all year.
yeah, if you don't have a car, especially.
So these two back here have been waiting for a while.
Thank you. So I agree with this gentleman on the observation that I've never encountered a pedestrian issue walking around town that's significant enough to warrant this change for this purpose. To the point of how MDOT treats cyclists, I think this just points to a bigger issue of MDOT or the state legislature or whoever needing to figure out legally how we treat cyclists. Are they cars? Are they not cars? Do I have to give them a yard of space? Can they drive their motor vehicles on a sidewalk? That needs to get legally figured out. And I would prefer to not make a change to the whole infrastructure of this town until the state can give us an answer on that. Lastly, I believe you said earlier in your opening presentation that it made it sound like there's an option for MDOT simply to repave the road as it exists now without having to introduce any of these other changes. If that's the case, what would be the difference in construction time for the proposed plan and simply fixing the road as is?
So I can answer all those questions. At this point, we don't have a construction schedule. We haven't begun the design of the roadway. These changes, like Lori and Alan mentioned, are not changing the curb. So there would be no additional time to construct any of these facilities. I can also answer the first question. The motor vehicle code in the state of Michigan recognizes cyclists or bikes as a motor vehicle. They have a legal right to the road. It's your responsibility to treat them like another vehicle. There's a 3-foot passing law in the state, so you need to give 3 feet of passing. How you measure that is up to you versus the cyclist versus the police that may or may not be enforcing it. If you do not yield and you're ticketed, it's a failure to yield while driving. There's a specific enforcement code that I'm not an enforcement officer, so.
There are curb
Just
bands.
to follow up on that briefly
Thank
then, if we're saying that legally bikes are motor vehicles, then but you also indicated a bicyclist can ride a bike on the sidewalk, correct? Then I'm speaking, sir. Then cyclists have the option to already use a special lane for traffic. Why do we need to adopt another change into this system if they already have access to a special lane that I can't take my engine running motor vehicle on? This all seems like trying to find solutions to problems that don't really exist.
Amen.
That's gonna introduce just a lot of mess for people without any real need to do so.
Alright, so just scenario, coming in off 99, going northbound into the city of Hillsdale. Somebody's going 35 in front of me. I can't wait to get over into the slow lane and get past them. Another thing is, turning there and on Steenberg and turning into the gas station, turning into Coney and Swirls, or not Coney and Swirls, but Overflow. Yep. And then the fairgrounds, like we mentioned, that's going to be chaos. I like aspects of it. I'd really love it if there was left-hand turn only at Bacon and other places in town, like Market House. That we can put stuff in there to make things safer. The church there, crossing and whatnot, we haven't had an issue there. I wouldn't be opposed to doing a single lane down through there, maybe, but as far as south of Bacon, I think you need to keep it 4 lanes. And like most people here said though, if it's not broke, there's no reason to fix it, so.
Government diet, not a road diet.
Yeah.
So,
What's really broke is buying the post office.
yeah, I agree with that.
So I probably have a fairly unpopular opinion here. I think that actually it is broke. I'm not sure that what it needs is bike lanes, which is why I find myself a little conflicted about what to say about this. I don't think that there's a lot of bicyclist traffic in Hillsdale. It's hard to sort of maintain that we need that piece of it, but the piece that I really like is the idea that we might actually slow traffic down on Broad Street. I know there's been talk of, well, we should enforce the speed limits on it and so forth, but there's been a lot of studies done that show that people really drive according to the cues of the road. And the cues of the road on Broad Street, apparently, and I live on Broad Street, so I watch it every day. I try to mow my grass, I try to mow the little section of grass that runs right along the highway, and from the cars that whiz 6 inches by me as I'm mowing the grass, and from the car that hit my dog just a couple months ago on Broad Street, I can tell you that whatever the cues are on that road tell people that you should drive 45 miles an hour. And so it's a neighborhood, but it's not a neighborhood street. It's not safe, and if there's some way that we could, if there's some way that we can cue to drivers that this is a downtown space, this is a neighborhood space, this is a space where cars share the road with kids, with bicyclists, with whoever wants to use it. If we could create that kind of safer environment, I would feel much more comfortable letting my kids walk around the neighborhood, walking downtown. I love what's happened with the growth of the farmers market over the course of the last few summers. That's a bright spot, I think, in downtown. But as soon as you get to the edges of the farmers market, good luck getting anybody to slow down for you. I've watched cars turn left into pedestrians trying to cross at the crosswalk, at the intersections to go to the farmers market. I think there's a real sense that this is a state highway and I get to drive really fast through here and I don't have to slow down and pay attention to anything. So I don't know if this project would have been conceived differently if the focus was on how do we focus on pedestrians, how do we focus on making the downtown a safe space, so that people could actually use those like social drinking areas that extend to the boundaries of downtown
without worrying that as they cross from, you know, from Hub and Grub over to Broad Street Market, that they're gonna get hit by a car.
Well, and that's why one of the reasons we're having this meeting, and why, and these are completely conceptual. So there's nothing set in stone here. There's nothing that's been, you know, decided on, and this is the, you know, end all be all for the project. So this was the kind of feedback we were looking for. So, you know, I definitely appreciate it, and MDOT appreciates it, and we will definitely consider it, and I'm already considering changes to what what is being presented here. Mary, you had a question, then there was a question
I'll
here.
yield and then come back.
Okay.
I'd just like to say, I was gonna bring up some of your points about the thoroughfare doesn't feel like this is a neighborhood, this is a downtown. Feels like a highway. I live just outside of town, but I do all my business in town. And I go to the farmer's market regularly, so I'm up there and it acts like a racetrack going through town. And speed limit or not, people are not gonna slow down. So I might actually be completely for the 3 lanes. And I'd argue to push back on some of the people here, like especially Fair Week, that seems to be the busiest week of the year through town. And most of those people are turning, if they're southbound, turning left into the fair. So you're really not losing a lane there. And also, just looking around the room at the general demographic, I seem to be one of the more younger people here. And so, speaking of my age group, most of my people, my friends and my colleagues, like they're younger, and even growing up around here, they move away to go to a town that has better downtowns or walking amenities or biking amenities. And so, just kind of looking to the future, this is something that actually really excites me. Just looking forward to what might be right in downtown.
I'd like to make it a little bit more creative if we can. We talked about semis, that produces a possibility of a bypass. Bypass that gets around, instead of using that, we could utilize another bigger building, and we could get these smaller straight trucks put on. And I'm in agreement with the idea of the bicycling idea. Up in Ann Arbor, down Miller Street, there's a variety of ways that they've gotten sold. They got signs up too. And there are a lot of caution lights there, but they are restricted for their speed, and that I thought was great. But I don't see down here in our little locale that we have a very troublesome time getting across the roads. I do see that we have some people as adults, we just kind of want to get through the road and get going, but we do have to administer something that says we need to collectively get a bargain that says we're gonna grow in the community and we want to have more people in the downtown area. And if we have that, we need to start looking at all those other pieces. And I would like to have the MDOT get a little bit more comprehensive of these ideas tonight, be brought later on, see if we can't find a good medium that would help all of us.
Mary?
I just want to address some of people's comments about not fixing it if it's not broken. It is broken. The part that is downtown, and I do a lot of work with the Dawn Theater, and before that, I did a historic walk through the city. When you are downtown by North Street and Broad Street, by the post office, if you are by McCullum and Broad Street, when those semis come by at the rate that they do come by, 2 lanes, 4 lanes of them, it is so noisy, you can't even hear me talking, and I have a very loud voice. When we're standing in front of the Dawn Theater, it is so noisy the way the trucks come through. So there's different goals, right? I mean, Matt Bell, if you're Matt Bell, you want to speed through downtown as fast as you can.
No, I walked for 3 months, it was great. I wasn't the fastest walker, but it was fun. And are you proposing to get rid of all semi-traffic through the town?
Can't stop the semis. No.
I don't think that's a possibility here, we can't do it.
But by slowing them down, I have no comment on what happens south of South Street. I mean, those of you who live down there and are concerned about that know better than I. But I can tell you in the 2 or 3 blocks of right downtown Hillsdale, it is broken. It's dangerous to cross the street there. It's dangerous the way people speed through downtown. And there's a trade-off. Yeah, you're gonna slow down the traffic there a little bit, although our experts tell us that you're not. So, Matt, although I know you're brilliant, I'm gonna go with the people who study this. Because you are set,
I
and
didn't
then,
address you at all.
I'm not attacking you at all, I'm addressing your comments,
Okay.
which were.
Mike,
They're all
Mike,
reasonable comments.
you wanna address that?
According
Yeah,
to reason.
I just wanted to, I just wanted to say a couple things. I think, we have heard some really great points tonight, so I'm gonna take back the flashing signals back to our office and see if we can work on that immediately. You wouldn't believe the amount of signals that have gone into flashing 25 years ago and no one's ever said anything to anybody at the city of anywhere. They've just, we complain amongst ourselves. I live off of an MDOT route, I live over in Ypsilanti. I also complain to my neighbors about my own road and then don't tell my colleagues to fix it. So those are things we can look at immediately, and I think Alan and Lori and I have some ideas for proposed changes. I think the one of the questions, as you see another version of this plan, is what issue you want to prioritize. And so some folks want to prioritize throughput in speed, that's fine. The road diet, the elimination of the lane, it does provide space because you're taking 24 feet away from travel. We don't want to use that as just a shoulder because people will then go into the shoulder and drive more recklessly, so it does open up space for another mode. But the one thing that we know throughout the state is we are limited legislatively by how we can change speed limits. So we will not change the speed limit on this roadway under the current conditions. The only way that will happen, and if it did, would be to increase the speed limits. So right now, the Michigan State Police is legislatively mandated to do a speed study on a normal day condition. So they don't get to come out during rush hour. They come out at 1:15 on a Tuesday during a normal day. They take a big sample of cars, they find the 85th percentile, and that's the new speed limit. So in the last 15 years that we've seen this at MDOT, that we've done that in areas similar to this, not even similar to this, just generally, the speed limit will go up. We've seen that in Ypsilanti, Ann Arbor, Lansing, Jackson, almost everywhere we've done it. So the one big thing that a road diet does, this may or may not be what you want, there's improvements with the plan that I think Alan certainly mentioned. The road diet will slow down vehicles without limiting the capacity of the roadway so severely that we would see new types of congestion that aren't there now. So that's just one thing to think about, is when it comes to the speeding question or speeds, the road diets are a documented way to do that safely, and MDOT is limited in its toolkit to address speeds head on.
Could we do a stepped issue where some signage, parking a police cruiser down at Steenberg Road, flashing signs on the way into town saying that the speed limit is changing, more attention to the fact there's a speed limit here. I've not seen a cruiser, I moved into town in '07, haven't seen a state cruiser writing a speed ticket in Hillsdale. I don't know if there's jurisdictional things there.
Oh, I see
but
it happen once a
They
week.
park at the fairgrounds almost every day. They sit right there. You come around a corner and boom, you're gone.
But are they running?
You have a question?
So there's a lot of, police, a lot of safety, a lot of cops looking, watching that.
Some four-way signals that make sense instead of the dead ones that we got right now. Those things don't require reconfiguring downtown. They just are putting signage up and better signals on the roads that we've got as a step to see if the added expense of a reconfiguration makes sense. These are our tax dollars we're talking about spending. And I'd like, again, let's do a government diet, not a road diet.
Julie?
For the last 12 years, I've walked every week in this town, from one side of the town to the other. I work downtown, I walk every week to work. It is broken. It is not safe. I could go up there with a red marker and show you all the places where I've almost been hit. It is not safe. It is not safe to walk in this town.
I would like to jump in on that, Julie, because I want to just back up to that 2007, 2008 timeframe
when I sat in a meeting similar to this, and Mr. and Mrs. Nash were there, Mr. Baker was there, and they were talking about that section in front of the old Gelsers, making that one-way and angled parking. And we had a meeting similar to this, and everyone gave their input, but the decision was already made. So where are we in this stage of planning, and will this come back to the voters, the people?
So that's not entirely true. Yes, you're right, there was a meeting like this, and options were given to the city. However, the city manager at that time sat on them, never presented them to council for approval. MDOT finally approached the city and said, we have a deadline. Make a decision, give us a different option, or this is the one we're going to choose. The city manager never did anything about it, and therefore MDOT chose it, and that's how we got what we did.
Is he here right now?
No, no. So this was back in 2004 or 5. So it was wait, Elias. So the city manager at the time, he is no longer here. And it was interesting because I heard that story from a staff member, a long-term staff member of the city who was at the time very close to that city manager as far as position. And then I actually, in an entirely separate meeting 6 or 8 months later, was talking to a MDOT engineer who happened to be part of that whole process, and I got exactly the same story unprompted from him, and I'm like, wow, who knew?
My point is, our current city manager is not here right now.
No, he was unable to be here tonight.
Alan, before you move on, you did commit in the beginning, this is a preliminary meeting,
This is all conceptual, and so all of this information will be looked at, or will be considered, and will address the plan, and at this point, this preliminary meeting is to see if there was enough interest to move forward or not, because there's a grant that's available to cover some of the city's costs, and if there wasn't enough reason to move forward, then we weren't going to apply for the grant. So, Jack.
Okay, one thing, and when I go down through town, all the way from the fairgrounds through town, I usually run on crews, just because I do. If people would obey the speed laws and stay in the left lane if you're gonna pass somebody, or if you're gonna turn left, that's what the left lane is for. It's not to poke along at 30 miles an hour and force people to pass you on the right that are actually running the speed limit of 35 out by the fairgrounds. That's one, and that's all police enforcement. I think, this is just my opinion, the downtown business district is not 99, it's Howell Street. That's why I see it.
Amen.
There are some businesses on Broad, and don't
Half
get
of
me
it's
wrong.
on a one-way street. Crazy.
So that's that. One of the councilmen brought up the safety of people jaywalking on Broad Street. And I agree with him. And the majority of the people is Sunday going to the Catholic Church. When I told him I had to stop and wait for a couple to cross the street, and it was the county prosecutor, he kinda just snickered. But if you're parking on that side of the Broad Street, on the courthouse side, there's no way to get onto the sidewalk without walking in the street, because that wall there, it's hard to even get out of your car on the right-hand side of the car.
That's
So,
too tight.
is there
It's
anything
dangerous.
here that does that? And also, the walking on the city streets, if you follow the walk and don't walk signs, how unsafe can it be?
Oh.
More
No,
unsafe
I
than
understand,
unsafe, yeah.
but you're
Right turns.
you're the one in the legal right of way. If you're
Except
following the signs.
except when you got 2
But
tons
that's
of
all
steel
police
coming in, it
enforcement,
doesn't always
that's
count.
right back to police enforcement again.
Yes, well,
Is it
Howell
gonna give
Street-
that more space on the courthouse parallel parking? Would it give those cars more space? Because we
can't back
had that
out.
horrible accident a couple weeks ago where the plow truck took all those cars out. And people
it
swing
would,
their
there would
doors
be, yeah, so
open.
there would be a buffer, yeah.
Cause they swing their doors open, there's so many
Yeah,
times we
there would,
had to hit our
this
brakes.
would allow for that buffer space.
Okay.
Hi, thanks. I probably have a somewhat unique perspective on this since I cycle almost everywhere, every month of the year that I can. I even walked here tonight, even though I didn't have to, so brownie points for that. Yeah, I could not care less about the bike lanes. I have, first of all, never found that they are necessary. The streets are wide enough. I think drivers are most of the time more respectful than they need to. Like, they'll give me 3 yards and they need to give me half a yard. And I don't know what good, 1,000 yards of bike lane does anyway. I don't see the point in any of that. But to all the points that have been made, Eric's point is exactly correct. And you can say, I'll drive whatever speed I want, blah, blah, blah. You won't. You follow the cues of the road. That's exactly right. You drive differently on a one-lane road. And the number of comments that have been made here already tonight about, oh, when you turn into town, some guy's going really slow in one lane. I want to get around him. I need another lane. You are admitting that you drive on this road as though it is a 4-lane highway because the road is telling you I'm a 4-lane highway, and you're in town and someone's kid might be running across the street, right? And for those who are saying, well, I don't want my journey time to go down from 6 minutes up to 8 to the other side of town, like, listen to yourself. You don't want a journey to go from 5 minutes to 10, Gordon frickin' Bennett. I will just say this, since this is a suggestions time, and I'm probably just shouting in the wind here and sound like a crazy European who drives his bike around. If you want to increase, slow down traffic top speed, but actually increase average journey speed, decrease average journey time, each one of those 3 or 4 way intersections needs a roundabout in it. Get rid of all the traffic lights.
Well, now
Then everyone would have to be better drivers, right?
They ripped them all out in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah.
They ripped all the roundabouts out in Abu Dhabi because the studies, the models were wrong.
All the drivers in Abu Dhabi are Arabs, though, so it wouldn't work.
There's a couple of the plans that you have on there that make complete sense, like that little V at, at Budlong. I mean, that is, like, that's a joke. I mean, because you can go straight and make a left. Like, if I'm driving and I should make a left and then merge, you actually can see better if you go straight and then make a left.
Yes,
So things like that, to me, make a lot of sense. Adding parking at the post office, huge. I mean, I think our biggest issue in town is parking. So, but there's nowhere for people to park. And we want people to come into town, but they have nowhere to park. So, and we've got, I mean, I can't even imagine what's gonna happen when the keeper opens, like where all those people are gonna park. I have a business in town, and the speed and people walking, you want it to be safe. And you're right, it seems like it's a highway because of the number of lanes. I don't really know how I feel about that because, like we said, okay, it takes you 8 minutes instead of 5, big deal. The bike lane to me, I mean, I can just see opening my door and taking out a biker. I just, to me, it's like a nightmare. But why go all the way from Carlton all the way to Steenburg in 3 lanes? Right. To me, that doesn't make sense at all. Just town. The part that we really need people to slow down is where we have people walking all the time. So what is it, 2 blocks, 3 blocks? Make that 3 lanes, and then people can, and I understand because one of my houses are on, on Berry. And so I don't like the idea of, okay, people have just got through town, they're gonna speed up. That's a possibility, but you don't necessarily, except through Fair Week, have people running across the street. Not there. In town, make it 3 lanes, but make them wider, okay? Make the parking lanes deeper, so people aren't getting killed, I just think that there's so many good things in the plan, but the bike lane to me is just completely unnecessary. But to make that part, those 2 blocks or 3 blocks from Carlton to Bacon or 1 more block down, yes, do something like that, because if we do have a bunch of drunk people walking around on the social thing, we don't want to hit them. okay? So, but make downtown more of a user-friendly, pedestrian-friendly, because we really need to get more activity going on downtown, and hopefully we'll have more storefronts, and we'll have more of that going on. And there's some really good steps in a lot of these plans, but it really needs to be revamped and reined in, I think.
I agree the bike lane aspect is kind of stupid and unnecessary, and like the issue that comes to mind for me is you've got a lane of traffic and then you've got parking and the bike lane's in between those two. So every time somebody pulls into or out of a parking spot, they have to traverse the bike lane, which strikes me as both dangerous for the people parking and for the bikers. So like that's the aspect of it that doesn't make sense. But I guess my question is the grant funding contingent on any aspect of this plan? Like is the grant money that you're talking about, is that conditioned on having bike lanes through downtown, or could we lose the bike lanes and still get the money?
Potentially.
Potentially.
What is the total amount of the grant that you would be writing, and then what would be the responsibility of the city after that grant?
The responsibility of the city would be up to 20%. And at this point with the traffic lights and some of the other changes that we're making, we're at just over $1 million.
So the city's portion or the total project?
The total project. You have a question?
I do. First thing, the girl with the baby that can't raise her hand a while ago had a question, so.
Okay.
Biceps of steel.
Yeah, my right arm is really strong. I don't have much nuance to offer, but just for the sake of getting testimony from the community out there, I live on Broad Street. I own a business on Broad Street. When I was pregnant with him, I was known as a pregnant lady that walked everywhere on Broad Street. And there's a huge problem. I mean, I've almost gotten hit. I've gotten nipped by cars before dozens of times. And it's a very, very short walk. So I'm not gonna weigh in too much on the plan itself, but just to say, the people who say there's no problem, I'm gonna disagree and add my voice, that there's a huge pedestrian problem in downtown, walking from downtown to the college, and most other places in the town.
Amen.
I do actually have a question, no, Alan, I do have a question.
Okay. All right.
So, I mean, everybody said a bunch of stuff, but if you guys go and revise this to some other plan, is there another meeting like this?
There would be.
Okay, that's it.
Dennis?
Yeah, well, I'm like the woman there with the problems crossing the street downtown, getting to the downtown from the college area, and by walking it every day. And, traffic gets bad and stuff. But you got people that's like me, that's elderly, and I'm legally blind, which you know that. So, I have to really be watchful when I cross these streets. Some of the traffic lights, if we could get them where they would work, and if you cross there at the police station to the Great Wall, you get about halfway there and the lights change, and the cars are coming at you already. Okay, what do? Hold your hand up, say, hey, wait a minute. I use a cane. I use my cane here or my other ones. I haven't had as much trouble with people trying to run over me with these as I did my white cane. And so I never used my white cane. But the thing is, I get around pretty decent. But I think if we would get the traffic lights fixed, get them where they can slow down, and if we have to, we can push the buttons and maybe help slow it down a little bit. And in the right places, because some of those places that we cross are wider than other places, and it takes a little more time. You got people there at the high rise, you got people at Hilltop, you got people at Center City. They're all elderly people walking across the street, and some of them, they got their runabouts and everything, but some of them don't, and it takes them a little while. So we need to take in consideration for those people, because they're as much of the citizens here of Hillsdale as the younger ones are, or the ones that are, can see better and are maybe able to run across the street. I don't know. But, I think slowing it down in the downtown area where we could get across there a little bit better, and getting across by the fire department and different places to come uptown would be a good thing. So,
Elias?
my 2 cents.
Thanks, Dennis.
To address CJ brought up the parking. I had been on planning commission for a number of years, and there was always the question of, it was always walkability, it was always parking. Walkability, we've discussed that. The parking issue that I find in Hillsdale, it's a non-issue. My office that I own, right across the alleyway, the technical alleyway from the parking lot that's at Midtown right there, is I'm in my office 6 hours a day if I'm not out on a job site or something. And that parking lot, I think there's more of my work vehicles going in and out of that parking lot. And it's not a lot, it's a couple. There's more of my vehicles going in and out of that parking lot and actually using the parking spaces than anyone else. So I think there are times where we have heavy flow of traffic into Hillsdale that are staying in Hillsdale and spending time at the farmer's market or whatever it is, or the fair, and then the parking lots fill up, which is natural when you have a lot of parking coming in. But the daily parking, if you want to park on Broad and you won't park at the city parking lot, that's either on next to the parking lot that's next to St. Anthony's parking lot across McCullum, or the city parking lot that's right there across from the library next to Midtown. If you don't want to walk the extra block, I don't find that as we need to create more parking around the city. Now, that being said, I do actually like this idea of cutting down the parking along Post Office and City Hall. I've almost clipped police cars have almost clipped me while I'm backing out of a spot. And then there's all the other drivers as well. I think that's actually a good idea, and so more parking naturally there, great. But as for the rest of the city, I don't find that as an issue really.
Apartment dwellers are hogging all the parking spaces.
Drew?
Try to park in that parking lot across from the post office, that 30-minute parking lot. Yeah, drive by there.
Well, that's an issue where the 30-minute one, maybe that change, I would argue that maybe you change the times of when you can park. But I can say all of the overnight parkings at, in the city parking lot, where you have that whole western side of the parking lot that's overnight parking, there's maybe 3 vehicles in there, and one of them is mine, because I know, because we're in and out of there all day, and it's the one spot that we know we can park without impeding any of the snow plowing or whatever that's going on in the rest of the
I agree
parking
with
lot.
that. But you got the apartment dwellers, I'll tell you one car right now, it's up right in front of the eatery. It's got an Alabama license plate on it. It's set there
Well,
for a month and
that
it's
would be,
not
that would
moved.
be, that would be an item,
Yeah.
to talk to the police department
It's
about.
not moved.
Drew?
Actually, to echo what Jack just said, the apartment dwellers are, I'd invite you to look at the North Howell block first thing in the morning before business is open.
And again, that's a complaint to the police department.
And I have, Alan.
Okay.
Number 2, I've spent the grand majority of my waking hours in downtown Hillsdale for the past 12, 14 years. There is an issue with walking, crossing from Broad to the Howell Street area. There just is. I'm not sure that this is the answer to it, but there is a concern. That's it. Thank you.
Ray, and then the gentleman in front of you.
So, I just wanna speak to, from Bacon down to Carlton, if we could go from 4 lanes on Broad Street up to Bacon, and then maybe condense down into 3 lanes in the downtown district, I think that would be a great idea. If we can do that, if we can add left turn light signals, I think that'll cut down maybe a little bit on the pedestrian, because at Bacon and Broad and Bacon and Howell and Carlton and Broad Street are the 3 major places for walking that I don't feel comfortable crossing the street. So when I go to work in the morning, if I have to park in Midtown lot and walk across, I mean, we've had employees hit before, right there at Bacon and Howell. And it's supposed to be 25 through there, and you're supposed to be looking at pedestrians walking across the street. Bacon and Broad Street people are flying down through there. And if we could have one problem with that is if there's somebody in the left lane turning west onto Bacon, and then there's somebody heading or southbound turning east on Bacon, I don't know how many times I've seen cars flying in the slow lanes through there, almost T-boning somebody turning because they can't see because both cars, the turn lanes, or they're not turn lanes, both cars in the left lanes are trying to turn. So if we can try to configure that a little bit, like I said, some aspects of this plan I like the Waldron Street Budlong, I like the post office, you know, the parking there, because a lot of times people are backing up out of the spot and people are trying to pull in to go to the post office, and it's almost a rear end there. So there's aspects that I think that we could maybe tweak and work out, that might help everybody. So that's just my final comments.
Okay.
I know I asked about the grant before, and you said it would potentially still be available if we didn't have the bike lanes. Can you expand on that? Like, is
I
this?
can't really, because I'd have to go back and talk to the grant organizers and find out, you know, their take on it.
I was just curious if the grant was in any way related to the existence of the bike lanes.
Part of it is, part of it is related, it's not necessarily related to the bike lanes, it's related, it's a TAP grant, so it's a Transportation Alternative Program grant, which is to support improvements to state trunk lines that will promote and improve safety for non-motorized traffic, and that includes pedestrians.
So did MDOT come to the city of Hillsdale, or did the city reach out to MDOT?
So that was sort of it was sort of a joint thing. Back when the placemaking study was done and they suggested a road diet, I approached MDOT because I didn't know what a road diet was. And this was back in 2014 or 15. And then and we discussed the ideas of road diet, and that was all pre-COVID. Post-COVID, I hadn't really done a lot with it, nor had I really talked to MDOT much about it. When MDOT recognized that they were going to be milling and resurfacing the route from Hallett to at the time it was just to Carlton, they approached me and asked me if we were still interested in looking at a road diet, and so that's when the discussions became more involved.
But where did the bike lane aspect of it come from? Like, did that come from?
So that came out of the placemaking study as well.
Which was what the state suggested.
No, that was what the planners from the placemaking study that Tifa did suggested back in 2014, 15.
Private contractor.
The number of bike users.
Private contractor.
That the city hired.
That the city hired, yes, yes.
Yes, I just wanted to, I was super excited about the Cook Street. I'm the maintenance man at St. Anthony's and do a lot of stuff downtown there. I was really excited about the Cook Street maybe being closed off. We've got a lot of kids over there doing a bunch of stuff. But I thought they're gonna have a good solution for the traffic coming up and down there, if that is traffic still gonna be coming up there. But if we're not going to resurface it and we're not going to do anything with it, and it's just block it off so it doesn't get any worse than it is, then that kind of makes me disappointed. And the fact that like using the private drive, that I don't think that's right. But I think blocking off that Cook Street, like that's just a horrible intersection. Like everybody trying to flip a U-ey around to get down there and all sorts of things. I did want to put an opinion out that I know St. Peter's has. They would dislike this greatly because they have very few parishioners there and they always park along that. It's not my opinion, but I told them I'd let people know that yeah, they utilize that a lot and they love being able to come in down there. One other thing about Broad Street, is there, I don't even know if this is even possible, handicap access or ramp access from the state road to the middle of the blocks at all, and I don't know if that's possible.
Not, if there's no crosswalk, there wouldn't be any
Well,
ADA access.
like, vans that come up with, if there's room for bike lane, is there room for handicap parking in the middle of the lot, or in the middle of the blocks at all for access?
I mean, that would be something that we could probably look at in more detail, but in this conceptual drawing, no, at this conceptual stage, that's not something we've looked at yet. So.
Two things, I think Ray, he dipped out after he made his comment, but I think he made a great compromise comment, kinda stop it vacant, do the downtown stuff. Other comment that hasn't been brought up, I mean, I know this is outside of the scope of what we're proposing, but the fairgrounds has no sidewalk along 99, along the fence, and I don't know if that's anywhere in the realm of.
No, that's not at this point, no, cause, I mean, a lot of that would be something that the fairgrounds would have to help with the construction costs, and it's not in their budget either. So.
The status of the traffic lights, they were obsolete. Do they get replaced or have to be replaced whether this project goes through or not, or is that just something that was included in there?
It was included in this project, but I don't know that necessarily, if they would necessarily.
Because the left
replace
turn
it.
lights, I mean, there's some good things, left turn lights and the crosswalk, I mean, all that would be really nice to have.
The signal portion was not originally included in MDOT's scope of work. And at this point, the signals were being coordinated with the bike lanes and included in that grant application. So that would have to be looked at, and MDOT would have to, if the city wasn't able to provide them, we would look at a review of them. But at this point, from MDOT side, it's not included, so that would be something we may have to revisit and find additional funding for.
If they're obsolete, would that constitute that MDOT is then responsible for replacing them no matter what? So if it's this costs $100,000 and this upgrade with a left turn light costs $120,000, would that be something that MDOT would be responsible for?
So, so the traffic signal, it could depend on the municipality, but on the state trunk lines, for the most part, we are the owner of the signals. It can be an intersection by intersection case. These ones are, I believe, owned but operated in conjunction with the county and the city. And so, yes, it would be something that would be included in MDOT, or on MDOT to replace in a normal project. In the project type that's proposed and has been selected for Hillsdale, it is concrete, milling down 1.5 inches of the asphalt and replacing it back. So there's no signal work proposed or budgeted for it. And I think the big thing with the cost of the grant is signals are very expensive. So the signals are about $350,000 to $550,000 per intersection. So you said $125,000. Thought I would just say that's for maybe one of the red, yellow, green.
How much is the Where are you buying those from?
It's the flagger with this house.
So it's almost 8 o'clock. Are there any other questions or things that have not been addressed before we close things down?
So this got, I think, touched on earlier, but how does this get decided? Is there like a special election? Do I tell people?
So what would happen is there would be a resolution placed before council, the city's council, and it would be a determination as to whether or not the city wants to pursue the road diet project. If the city council says no, then the project dies. If the city council says yes, we would like to continue to pursue it. We would apply for the grant, and then if the grant monies were approved, then the city would continue moving forward with it. The MDOT will do the repaving project regardless. So, but the other things that are being proposed here would not occur. So if the other items didn't happen.
What's the timeline?
The timeline, the project is slated to occur in 2027. The grant applications are due for, at the end of February in this year. And then at that point, you know, design work starts, you know, at MDOT and that type of thing, but and their bidding process and all of that. But the project itself is scheduled for sometime in 2027.
Have any of the council people shared their thoughts on this?
Yeah, because this is, like I said, this is the first meeting. This is all conceptual. So, you know, this is the kind of feedback we needed before we could even move forward. So I appreciate you all for coming, and I appreciate everybody's feedback. It's given me and Mike and Lori a lot to think about, and we will you know, go back, regroup, and bring something to you if council wants us to continue to pursue it. Grant?
Have you considered a roundabout there at the 6-way?
We did consider it. The problem is there's not enough area there for the diameter that we needed to make it all work.
I would ask you to look at the one in Adrian in their downtown.
Mm-hmm.
I was in observance of it yesterday, and trucks and trailers went through it. It slowed traffic down, and it had excellent pedestrian walkways through it.
It does. I agree. And I'll look at.
Solve three of the 4 problems that we brought up here.
Well, and that's actually good. I appreciate the feedback. I will talk to the traffic engineers at Jackson's TSC and have them look at it again.
Please.
Just one last thing. So you're saying that this will be taken back to council, and then council will make the decision whether to move forward on it or not.
Mm-hmm.
So our opinions here, whatever, you're just gonna take it back there, and it'll be their call.
Well, you could go to the
Number
council
2,
meeting, though,
yeah,
right?
right. But my second question is, how much have we already spent on this? How much money's already been spent on the contractors to come up with this and so on?
Wayfinding.
It's all been state money.
All state money?
Yeah, this is.
So nothing.
No,
nothing's come out
the
of it.
traffic study was city money, and it was right around the $30,000. Gary?
On the one question, I know most of the city council members are here.
Or
have been here
Yep.
and have been listening to this. And it just seems to me that one of the important things is to improve the walkability. So that you can walk across the street without having to watch out that you're gonna get run over. And as was pointed out, there's a lot of times where it's very difficult to even cross the street, to go from one side of the street to the other. And there may be businesses on this side of the street, and you wanna go, you can grab lunch over here on the other side. It's really difficult to do that. So I think that, from my personal opinion, that would be something to really focus on, is the walkability part of downtown.
Okay, 2 more, and then we want to wrap it up. I don't know which one of you. Raise your hand for Doug first.
So, regarding the deadline on the grant, it sounds like the end of February of '25 is when it's due, and so that's about a month or less from now. And so you're gonna go back and redo the drawing, reconsult with MDOT and the city, and have a public meeting, all in that short time frame.
We won't have another public meeting before the grant application is due, but there would be a resolution presented to council, and yes, I would go back and make some changes to the designs and resubmit them to MDOT prior to applying for the grant. But before it went further as far as construction documents and finalizing designs with MDOT, we would have more public meetings before.
And typically, the grant application, though, is gonna be tied to what your final design is.
Yeah, I think the grant program, it would be kind of a pre-committal meeting. So what we would work with Alan and Lori would work to get is whatever changes can be made before that February deadline, and take those changes to that grant application for it to be reviewed, and they would be able to get comments back from the program managers and reviewers. It's an interdisciplinary group throughout the MDOT and some other state agencies. So they would be able to give additional input about what parts of the project would be eligible, would be fundable, and any additional improvements that they could suggest to, with what you all have said, what Alan's heard, to find funding, because they've seen thousands of projects throughout the state.
And just a last comment on that, is I'd be amazed if government works that fast.
How can we encourage MDOT to replace the obsolete lights that are the lion's share of the problem we're discussing tonight, with the crosswalks and the staged left-hand turns through intersections that could all be solved by replacing the obsolete traffic lights, and MDOT wants to wait like CL Real Estate for a grant to come in, instead of producing the money to replace the lights we know are obsolete that would solve most of these problems. How can we encourage the state to?
So when Alan said obsolete, and correct me if I'm wrong, Alan, that was in reference to the life cycle, technology, and materials.
Yes.
So whether or not the signal function and purpose is obsolete, I have no idea. And there are specific engineers that work at MDOT that all they do is signal operations. There is nothing we can get them to do other than review the existing operations at the intersections and determine whether or not it's justified via their formulas and recommendations from other engineers from the engineering industry to make any changes. Now that's not was not proposed and is not part of MDOT's project. So that's where Alan and Lori have been working to propose new changes to the signals as part of this project.
Would this be something that if you're close to getting hit or someone illegally turns and doesn't give you the right of way, that if you made a police report with Michigan State Police and demanded that it was them and not the city police or whatever, however that bureaucracy works, that at least, sorry for the crassness, but from what I understand for MDOT rules is they're written in blood. So people die, and that's how speed limits go down. It's because people die. And so if the actuality of people almost getting hit or illegal actions happening, would that help in the sense that you can look at all the reports and go, man, 30 people a day almost get hit on these roads because of how they are designed? Is that something that MDOT looks at?
So we, as the state, do not have a near miss, near hit database. And most states that I'm aware of do not. That's something that the engineering and planning industry is trying to make enhancements to try to find these areas that we know. So it's helpful for us to hear, but I don't have a specific report that I can pull. Now, all the crashes that are documented by any police division, so Hillsdale, county, or the state, if there's a crash that's reported and a police report is made and filed, that report is shared with MDOT and other state agencies. So even if it's a no injury or a minor injury or a fatality, that we do have access to.
But if there's no police report, there's no data.
But if there was going to be data that was given to them, that was my question, is would it be helpful to start demanding MSD just
No,
park
the
there and
unified
come talk to
crime
everyone?
report, accident report goes, they all go to the same place, not accidents, all of them do, city, county, everybody.
But if there's no report, then there's no way, there's no
Right, but
documentation.
my hope was that a near miss that probably everyone in this room has had.
Right, but, Julie and I have had multiple near misses, but we never went to the police department and asked them to file a report, so there's no record of it. So, to answer your question, no, there is no information, so there's no way for anyone to make changes due to it. So,
But if
If you
people
wanna stand
started
there and
from-
But
document it.
if people did, if people
Yeah,
started.
if they were, if, I would imagine that if there was
Well,
documentation, then.
he just said that near misses aren't collected,
Don't
which I
register.
kind of assumed it was kind of a learning
Yeah, but-
experience for all of us.
Well, I
That's-
would imagine though that the reason is not, that there's nothing there to collect because there's no reports that are ever made.
Yeah, and I'm not aware of any, police departments that take near miss reports. So, I want what you're suggesting, cause it would help all of our jobs, it really would, so. I'll take it.
Everyone's just gonna stop making sure they actually get hit. Put some effort into this.
Mr. Baker?
Yes.
Would it be permissible to share the YouTube channel with the crowd?
Sure.
If anybody wants to revisit this or share it with anybody, it is a YouTube channel. It is The Adams Times. That's just one D, like Adams Township. The Adams Times. Should have it up later tonight.
Alright, thank you.
Thank you.
Alright, thank you all. Appreciate it.
Yeah, THE.
Adams.
And Adams
Yeah.
Times.
One word.